Well, the live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch dominated the Memorial Day box office. This coming from the Hollywood Reporter, just the headline: Lilo and Stitch blows up Memorial Day box office with a $183 million bow. Mission Impossible nabs series best $77.5 million. Now, if we jump over to Box Office Mojo, it earned $182.6 million domestically, another $178.6 million internationally. So actually, the live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch over the Memorial Day weekend earned $361.2 million globally. Now, what this does is that it basically sends the message loud and clear that the audiences will accept these bullshit live action remakes no matter how much they complain about them. It doesn't matter that The Little Mermaid bombed. It doesn't matter that The Lady and the Tramp went directly to Disney Plus. Same with Pinocchio starring Tom Hanks. No, if it's the right live action remake, the audiences will actually show up. And Variety actually wrote this article. It was a couple of days ago, and I want to do a response to it. It's titled "5 Reasons Why Lilo and Stitch Shattered Memorial Day Box Office Records." Disney's Lilo and Stitch tore into the global box office opening over Memorial Day weekend with a record-breaking $183 million domestically and $341 million worldwide, powered by a potent combination of nostalgia, family-friendly characters, and a resurgent theatrical marketplace. Those ticket sales overtook 2022's Top Gun Maverick, $126 million over the weekend, and $160 million through the 4 days, as the biggest Memorial Day weekend debut in history. And Lilo and Stitch secured the second largest start across any 4-day holiday weekend, behind only 2018's Black Panther, which amassed $242 million over President's Day. Quote, "This is a sensational opening," says David A. Gross of movie consulting firm Franchise Entertainment Research. "It's a crowd pleaser." Lilo and Stitch also confirms that Disney just needs to be more selective in terms of the studio's live-action remakes. Earlier this year, its Snow White reboot bombed with $204 million globally against a $250 million budget, partially because that nearly 100-year-old story doesn't have cultural cachet with today's audiences. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. That's clearly not true for the $100 million budget of Lilo and Stitch, which is adapted from the 2002 animated film and earned more in 4 days than Snow White did during its entire box office run. That is actually the sad part. And then here are the 5 reasons why Lilo and Stitch share box office records. The first point they bring up is that your parents', not your great-grandparents' favorite cartoon, obviously referring to Snow White. Again, there are a lot of reasons why the live-action remake of Snow White bombed as bad as it did. Not only was it very controversial from the get-go, if you read the reviews of Snow White, even the top critic reviews were saying that the movie was very mediocre at best. So it was a highly controversial movie, but there wasn't anything really special about it. I did not pull that from the audience score. I pulled that from the top critics at the time, and I do remember that. I believe it was the BBC and Seattle Times. I could be wrong about one of them, but I know the BBC said that the movie was not good enough to be viewed as a classic, but it's also not bad enough to rightfully skewer. Not only that, with regards to Snow White, the 1937 animated movie, okay, the 1937 Snow White is seen as a sacred cow, right? Why are you going back and doing a live-action remake of this beloved animated classic? Now, you can make the argument with Lilo and Stitch that Lilo and Stitch is nowhere near the same level as Snow White. Therefore, it's not gonna have the comparisons. Now, Lilo and Stitch, I don't want to say was a hit at the time. Obviously, you had the movie in theaters, but you also had the Disney Channel. You also had Lilo and Stitch, the series that ran on the Disney Channel for a few years. You had one direct-to-video sequel, which was Lilo and Stitch 2 Stitch Has a Glitch, and then Leroy and Stitch, which was basically the finale to Lilo and Stitch, the series. Oh, and I almost forgot Stitch the movie, which was basically the unofficial pilot to Lilo and Stitch, the series. So again, you can't really compare Lilo and Stitch to Snow White because one is a sacred cow while the other isn't. Snow White obviously being the sacred cow. I think that's honestly the biggest reason why Lilo and Stitch succeeded over Snow White. Here we go. I'm gonna read their response because I've rambled on long enough. Lilo and Stitch is a comedy about a chaotic alien who crash lands in Hawaii and gets adopted by a young girl and her older sister, toppled in theaters with an ideal distance from the original adventure, which has become a family favorite on Disney Plus over the last 23 years. Disney Plus has not existed for 23 years, but okay. It's been enough time that millennials have a rosy sense of nostalgia for the chaotic blue creature, and now they're bringing their kids to the movies. But it hasn't been too long where people forgot the charm of the first film. Prior live-action juggernaut shows Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Lion King followed a similar formula. Those billion-dollar hits were based on 90s-era Disney classics. And yes, if you're looking at the live-action remakes, I actually did forget about this during my rambling, is that the only three real successful live-action remakes were Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King, and that was mostly just, and I argue that was mostly due to nostalgias at the time. Believe you me, who had any nostalgia for Pete's Dragon? And ask yourself this question: when was the last time you saw the original Pete's Dragon? For me, it was many, many years ago. The only exception to the rule was 2016's The Jungle Book. But The Jungle Book also just came and went. It didn't have any real staying power like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King did. And then later, Mufasa would be spun off of the quote-unquote live-action remake of The Lion King. Meanwhile, theatrical duds of Snow White, 2019's Dumbo, and 2018's Mary Poppins Returns were based on comparatively ancient texts. I don't think that's what it was. You could make that case with Dumbo and Mary Poppins, but again, you're also conveniently ignoring the fact that Snow White was a sacred cow. Seriously, the original Dumbo flew into theaters in 1941 during World War II and before the invention of color TV. There are exceptions. 2016's The Jungle Book remake was massive, earning $967 million, despite the fact that 50 years had passed from the first film, while 2023's The Little Mermaid fell short of expectations, earning $569 million, even though the original underwater musical adventure was hugely popular in the late 80s. Lilo and Stitch is more proof that turn-of-the-century nostalgia is having a moment, says Sean Robbins, Fandango's director of movie analytics. Millennial and Gen Z audiences turned out in great numbers for what is now a budding generational classic. Disney recently paused a live-action reboot of 2010's Tangled. That was a terrible fucking idea, which could be too soon to revisit. That being said, Disney's next experiment is much newer IP. A Moana remake swims into theaters in summer 2026. That is even stupider than doing a live-action remake of Tangled. Quote, "It's inevitable that Disney will venture into more remakes of its modern library. Lilo and Stitch has certainly set a strong precedent, though." And the second point, I think this is the biggest reason why the Lilo and Stitch live-action remake actually did so well, is now they say Stitch never goes out of vogue. People forget how popular Stitch is as a character, not just in the United States, but also globally, especially in Japan. Most people, now some people know this, but most people actually don't. Stitch actually had his own anime series in Japan. Now, most fans of Lilo and Stitch outright ignore it because of all the contradictions in Stitch's character in the anime versus the movies and Lilo and Stitch the series. But there's no denying that Stitch himself is an insanely popular character, and probably why this live action remake did so well. Hell, if you even look at the poster for the Lilo and Stitch live action remake, it's just Stitch on the poster. There's a reason for that, and this article does bring it up. Stitch is apparently a brand unto itself. Over the last 2 decades, Lilo and Stitch has never waned in popularity on the shelves of toy stores. Stitch-themed stuffed animals, pajamas, sleeping bags, and Squishmallows, sorry, I mispronounced that, have helped the property become one of Disney's top 10 best-selling franchises, with retail sales over $2.6 billion, and yes, that's billion with a B, in 2024 alone. Quote, "Stitch has become a modern mascot for the brand, arguably more recognizable and familiar among today's young families than the studio's legacy characters," says Sean Robbins. Then there's Disney Plus, where viewership has grown significantly every year on the streaming service, according to studio insiders. The franchise has driven over 500 million hours of streams, with the original accounting for more than 280 hours. That's a lot of Stitch mayhem. The third reason they bring up, I don't know how true this is. They say power of the PG movies, basically since all of the Hollywood studios have been releasing more family-friendly fare than they have in years past. Again, I think honestly, I think the biggest reason is, as they brought up earlier, is that Stitch himself is such an iconic character. Like, there is a reason why he is the only character on the poster for the live-action remake, and hence why in the Super Bowl ad, it was only him running around on the football field. Now, I actually want to stop myself there, because the inevitable comments are, well, that was a callback to the original teasers where you had Stitch ruin the classic Disney moments from like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and I get that. But there's a reason why Disney has put so much emphasis on Stitch and not so much on Lilo, is because Stitch is the star of the movie. It's not so much, it's not Lilo, it's not Nani, it's not Cobra Bubbles. Stitch is the fucking star. But anyway, let's get into power of PG movies. Hollywood loves the adage that moviegoing begets moviegoing, and that seems to be especially true when there's a smattering of options for youngsters. So far, studios have released 9 PG-rated movies nationwide since January, up from 6 that debuted during the same period in 2024. When families, and especially important popcorn purchasing demographic, have gone to see a Minecraft movie or Dogman, they've been treated to trailers for Lilo and Stitch and other upcoming kid-friendly films. It's the best form of advertising for anyone who owns and operates a movie theater. Now, they're not wrong in the sense that there has been more family-friendly fare released in the last couple of years. Excuse me, had some stuck. There has been more family-friendly fare released in the past couple years. But again, I think that the live-action Lilo and Stitch remake would have been successful even without it, because as I said, Stitch himself is such an iconic character that that's all that they would have to sell the movie on, and bada bing, bada boom. Even if you took out the other PG-rated movie, it doesn't matter. Right, Stitch was just that iconic. Now, I believe that this last point here is also a significant contributing factor, and they bring up healthy competition. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time that Lilo and Stitch faced off against Tom Cruise at the box office. In 2002, the animated Lilo and Stitch opened in second place behind the action star sci-fi blockbuster Minority Report. This time, Lilo and Stitch placed first over Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, as the 8th chapter in the Cruise's long-running spy series launched with $77 million over the 4 days. In post-pandemic times, Hollywood has seen that effect of counter-programming plays. Think Barbie and Oppenheimer with look how big fucking Barbenheimer was in 2023, or last Thanksgiving's trio of Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2. Don't cannibalize grosses. Instead, they've helped to fuel bigger collective turnouts than any one-off success could achieve. Yes, movie theaters need more than just one big hit movie. I remember, I think it was a couple years ago now, whenever the last Spider-Verse movie came out, I think it was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I could be wrong. I know Into the Spider-Verse was the first one. I think, it was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I remember when that came out, and that movie was like #1 at the box office for something like 6 weeks, and theater owners were actually complaining at the time that they can't sustain that movie theaters can't sustain on just one hit movie for 6 to 8 weeks. There needs to be hit movie after hit movie after hit movie. And they're not wrong. I mean, look at the success of Barbenheimer from 2023. Now, my theory about Barbenheimer, again, this is just my theory and speculation. Don't take this as a matter of fact. In my opinion, Warner Brothers opened Barbie against Oppenheimer as a giant middle finger to Christopher Nolan for leaving Warner Brothers to go make Oppenheimer at Universal. So Warner Brothers is sitting there thinking, oh, Chris Nolan, you're going to leave us and go make Oppenheimer with Universal? Fuck you. We're going to release one of our biggest IP movies against your 3-hour biopic. But then what happened is that the fans embraced it on Twitter and dubbed the whole thing Barbenheimer with both movies. I know Barbie made over $1 billion at the time, despite everyone decrying that it was quote unquote woke. And Oppenheimer, while not crossing the $1 billion mark, got pretty damn close. I think with $960 or $970 million, like globally. So yes, Barbenheimer actually benefited both movies. The intention doesn't matter if Warner Brothers opened Barbie against Oppenheimer as a fuck you to Christopher Nolan, all anyone is going to remember is the outcome, never the intention. And I do remember last Thanksgiving when Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2 all opened at the same time, and it was one of the biggest Thanksgiving box offices in recent history. Here we go. I've rambled for too long. Quote, non-novelty nor flash in the pan, counter-programming works for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the baked-in marketing hook that such a matchup provides, says senior Comscore analyst Paul Dergarabedian. I have to try to remember how to pronounce his name, but yes, this is how movies used to release. It used to be the power of the double feature. Everyone now thinks, no, we have to space out all of our releases because we can't compete with each other. But look what happened to Barbenheimer. They tried to do the same thing with Saw. Was it Saw X? I think it was Saw X and Paw Patrol the movie by trying to call that Saw Patrol. Now that one didn't really take off in the same way as Barbenheimer, but this is a more recent phenomena. If you go and look back at the history of releasing movies, studios used to stack their releases against each other all the time. For that reason, it was beneficial for everybody. Instead of just having one big movie, like imagine if Barbie opened up a week before Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer would have never been a thing. You know, Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2 all going toe to toe. Yeah, that's how it appears on paper. But that's just all that is just clever marketing. Okay, Paramount, Universal, and Disney did not compete with each other on Thanksgiving weekend as they brought up. You know, as a result of Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2 opening on the same day, it led to one of the biggest Thanksgiving box offices in recent history. You know, here we go. In the case of Lilo and Mission, this weekend delivered the best Memorial Day weekend haul with $322 million across all films. It's been more than a decade since this many people went to the movies over the holiday frame. The prior record was established in 2013 with $314 million, led by Fast and Furious 6, The Hangover Part 3, and Star Trek Into Darkness. Yes, studios used to stack their releases and release them all in the same day. Then they got away from that because they didn't want to compete with each other, and that led to an absolute mess. But now you have Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2. I do remember. I think they were calling it Glicked. You know, not to be confused with Jiminy Glick, the character played by Martin Short on Comedy Central. But yeah, I do remember the Thanksgiving weekend, you know, Wicked and Gladiator 2 opening the same day. They were trying to Barbenheimer that by calling it Glicked. Again, the name didn't really stick like Barbenheimer did, because there's only ever going to be one Barbenheimer. Barbenheimer was the exception. That was the name that caught on. Okay, that is honestly why Lilo and Stitch succeeded, but of course, because Lilo and Stitch succeeded the way that it did, Disney is going to learn the wrong lessons from it. Because what they're seeing online is that, you know, everybody is complaining about all these live action remakes, but yet Lilo and Stitch was a massive success. So it's like, so on one hand, you're complaining that you want more original movies and less of these quote-unquote live-action remakes, but yet you're going to rush out and watch live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. You're going to rush out and you're going to watch a Minecraft movie over these original movies. You know, what lessons are they going to take? What lessons are they going to take from the success of the Lilo and Stitch live-action remake and the success of Minecraft movie? Is that more IP is going to be inevitable, and you know that this is going to happen. Is that okay? Yes, they put a pause on the live-action remake of Tangled, but they're still chugging along with Moana, despite releasing Moana 2 last year, which makes absolutely zero fucking sense. And when the quote-unquote live-action Moana inevitably bombs, it then is going to be, oh, what happened? Lilo and Stitch was such a massive box office success. Dur, 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 dur. And you know that's all that these studios that's all these studios are going to see from this. So let this video serve as a warning. I'm going to end it off with this because I know I've been rambling. I probably rambled way longer than I needed to. Be prepared to see a lot more quote-unquote IP-driven films in the future because unfortunately Lilo and Stitch happened to be the one movie that the one quote-unquote live-action remake that really took off.